Nobody else knows.
All right then, and we don't have any public coming into this? Bianca?
Nobody else coming in? Nope.
Okay. All right then. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Purpose of this meeting is a special meeting for council to formulate the 2022 budget. And I'm going to remind council of the declaration of pecuniary interest if it arises. I want to welcome everyone. This is a bit of a hybrid meeting. We've got some people in person and some people at home doing it remotely. Anyway, I want to thank staff for all the work to get us to where we are today to launch the 2022 budget process. So we started off by receiving some surveys last week from the public, and it was nice to see that a lot of the things we were either already dealing with or they were going to be dealt with over the next couple of weeks here. So we do have a schedule here, and hopefully we'll be able to speed that schedule up. But as of now, it shows that the process could hopefully be done by April 5th. So anyway, so we'll move right into the business of the day. And the first item we have on here is fire. So welcome, David, to our meeting, and I'm looking forward to this.
Likewise. Is Ray in the room?
Yes.
Great. Okay, Ray, are you there?
Yep, I'm here, David.
Thank you. Okay, maybe if it makes sense, I'll share my screen with everyone and we'll just recap what was just said. We'll go over a couple high-level things. We got the budget schedule fine. I have two tabs here discussing the factors that are affecting the 2022 HPM budget, just as to get the wheels turning, I suppose. Possible things that will affect the budget right off the top. First thing comes to mind is inflation. We are now at a record high within the last 30 years. We're now over 5.1%. So something to be worried about as we step through. Obviously, no one wants to see taxes increased, but we'll have to answer or offset the inflation rate with means. Ideally, it's revenue we generate from municipality, then it would be grants, then it would be other sources, think of donations, and very last would be taxes. So that's the order of precedence that we'll stick to. Other things would be, it's an election year. So a lot of attention's on everyone, and we're looking to reduce taxes or keep taxes at a minimum and get things done. Other things that are baked into the plan, additional staff levels. We're looking at a full-time proposed economic development person as well. Mandatory legislation, we see that COVID is starting to wind down. The grants that we've been able to secure for COVID will also be not coming in as quickly as it once was. Moving on to the next slide, other things that will affect the budget. Council community initiatives, the town hall, of course, is top of mind, and other things that are important to our citizens of HPM per the list of priorities that they gave us. So with that in mind, we'll step into fire. Ray, thanks for carving out the time in your schedule. If we go through this, I'll go right down to the bottom and I'll summarize where we are right now with the current plan. Right now, if we look at this, factoring in, just 1 second. Okay. I'll get my slide right. Sorry, I'm out of focus here. Scrolling down, we can look at the year-over-year difference and the increase decrease. If you look at 21 budget comparing to 22 budget, we have a 9% increase. There are certain things that are baked in there from an operation and Capex point of view, which I'll let Ray discuss in details. Ray, if you can help frame your needs and wants. The theme here today is needs and wants, what our department heads absolutely must have, and then what's on their wish list. So Ray, if you're okay to talk about your capital expenses that have, for instance, carried over from 21 due to mostly COVID issues, and we can get into other operational effects that are increasing your budget.
So for the capital, what's been carried over was the floor grading, the generator, some masks, and some PPEs that had to be carried over just because I could not get them. Where else do you want me to go with this, David?
Yeah, so the carryover, then you have your PP&E, you have your masks. Your masks are need to be replaced or refurbished. I think you were talking about being refurbished. And I have your station 1 standby generator. That's an imperative fix. And other things that are possibly tabled for Ray's fire department is possibly another half-ton truck to replace the current aged one. That's another thing that will, of course, change that number. If we strip out that truck that I have $40,000 on, you'll see that it immediately hits the tax rate. So now we're down to 3%, which is usually deemed to be acceptable in that 2 to 3% bandwidth. So these are the tough decisions that we have to make with our department heads to see what is imperative and what can be either delayed, put off, or if we can look at a different way of doing things, a more efficient, better way, less expensive. So on top of that, if we go and Ray's ability to manage his business year over year, you'll see that he's actually way under budget. If you compare 21 budget to 21 actuals, you'll see 654,000 versus 485,000 for 2021 actuals. So that's sure there's things that are on Ray's side. COVID is on no one's side, but a lot of things got delayed and pushed. So year over year, the uptick to call the bandwidth of 3 to 9% is what we're trying to drill down on here today. Going up, we've gone line by line. For the counselors, point to jump in here and look at the line items. Does it make sense, gentlemen, for you to take time from a top-down viewpoint?
I think it would there, David. It's when you say carryover on these items, is that carried over from last year? Like, was the funds already put in last year's budget? Correct. Or
it's things that were delayed and therefore deferred, therefore coming over to 2022 in the budget process. So
we already taxed for them last year?
Yes, although we'll need to factor it in. It's money that was already allocated for 21, but is now going to come over to 2022.
Right. Okay.
Looking at the reserves or the revenues is the first category we'll go through, gentlemen.
I did see Hart's hand up there. I don't know, you had something there, Hart? I can't see everyone, just so I can kind of see for the most part, but just bear with me, hold your hand up high if you're in the council chamber. So go ahead, Hart.
Yeah, it was just kind of along what you were getting at, Jim, was if that's a carryover from last year, we have budgeted the money already for it, right? So the money should be in reserves, or where did said money go to? Yes,
they will be in reserves, and it's a drawdown from reserves. Or, I mean, there's multiple ways we can inject money into the business to cover what's already been approved.
But just
sorry, go ahead.
Not to get off point. This is why I like to have that reserve policy, because it's something like that.
The reserve balances, which is a nice way to frame that as to what is available and allocated. That's something we can do. I have the reserves summarized as well on the tab here. So.
Yeah, I know it's going to take.
Everyone here is okay. Our screens here are playing tricks on us.
Okay, Hart, you want to finish up?
Yeah, like I know it's going to take him some time. I wasn't really commenting on the reserve policy per se, but issues like this, like I said, if we had the policy in place, to me, that money should just automatically be bumped into the 2022 budget.
Yes.
So, and throughout these departments, there's often stuff like this where I think in years past, we plop that money back into a general reserve, and then we go back out and we start taxing or looking for other ways to get it, when this money should just easily be rolled back into the next year's budget.
Correct. Yes, and that is the methodology. That's how we're handling this.
Okay.
Counselor Ellis?
Without repeating
If it
what
makes sense.
Councillor Webb has said, but I'm not, no, I'm on here. Yeah, it looks to me like we're taxing again for the carryover.
No. If you look at the opening slide and reserves, you have your 2021 budget, you have your 2021 actuals, and then you have your 2022 budget. So right now we are looking top down on what we're going to draw down for reserves to fund either carryovers or priorities in 2022.
Okay, thank you.
If you follow me, I'm on the top of the revenue reserve tab.
Yeah.
Which then breaks out where the funds are coming from.
Is that a general, is that just a fire account, David, or is that the general?
Is everyone following along?
I'm not sure, David. What page are you on?
So we're on the fire tab
Yep, what page?
and we are on the first page. 2022 fire budget, HPM.
Reserve from reserve to minus 71.5, right?
Correct. Right now we have to offset operating. We have due from reserves 94,100, and we have to offset operating at minus 40,000. And those can change. The big question here is what is going to be the tax rate? Well, there's three things that come before that. It's revenue that's generated by departments. It can come from taxes, it can come from grants. And taxes being the last lever that we want to fund or make up the gap or difference. So it's really a luxury to be able to pull these three levers before we decide anything, any sort of tax implication.
So give me those three again with grants.
Yeah, so if you go left, right, then the most favorable would be revenue that we're generating. Think of tipping fees at a station. Then we can have grants. Unconditional grants are the best. Conditional grants are good, but not as good.
Okay.
And the other one we could have then would be from our reserves. And the other one could be other. Other would be a donation. So Ray, if you know any wealthy friends that want to donate to your department, we're open and accepting.
Okay.
So that's how you'll see the breakout of this opening slide here. You got due from reserves, you got provincial conditional grants, you got permit fees. Permit fees would be revenue generating. And then you have miscellaneous revenues from the Jamboree, for instance. And then the bottom one, you have donations. Donations right now, we have 0 coming in year over year. So not something to bet on here for funding.
So David, I think the big thing here for council, putting aside what was in reserves from last year, like what we ended up, we couldn't, it's carried over. The big thing is the number of what it was last year to what it is this year of new money. I think that's what I need to know is when you say it's 9%, but some of it's already things that are in the reserve because we budgeted for it last year. It's really not new money or anything. It's just bringing some of that money that we budgeted for last year out of the reserve, right?
Yes. Yes, I mean, it's carved out, it's secured, and it's to offset the expenses that were already approved. Yes, whether it's capital or operating. In this instance, we're talking about primarily capital-driven costs in Ray's department.
Okay.
And so going down, we're into now due to reserves. This is us replenishing the reserves. Year over year, there's been a constant reserve replenishment of 92,000, between 92,000 and 99,000. So my assumption is that we're going to stick to that level of topping up the reserves. That's in my 2022 budget on fire, row 23. I'll just go top down, and if, as people want to interject, stop, ask a question, please, as you see fit. We're now into wages, and I'm into the 2205 or 5102. We've taken the 2021 budget number of 183,000, and we've applied the rate of inflation, or what was already approved for the difference there. That's where you see the 189,384 number. I left the bank overtime payout. Scrolling down, we're now into wages for raise volunteer firefighters. It's the same methodology. And the same thing with the benefits as well as we scroll down here. The common theme throughout all departments is we're not expensing mileage. I think people are very cognizant of that, aware, and it's okay to bill for mileage. Obviously, if it's approved and if you're doing something day to day, but department over department, I've seen zero balances for mileage on actuals. Just an observation. So here, if we look at, if everyone can see how I'm scrolling through here, if we have totals, 2021 budget for wages, we had 443,000. This year we have 453,000 as the difference, or the uptick, if you will. Scrolling down, I'm now into education. Not a whole lot happened last year in 21 for obvious reasons. The amount is carried over year to a level of 15,000. You'll see that we spent only 1,400 or 1,382 for education last year. And you'll also see then the carryovers, 2021. So it's essentially be 15,000, which is the base year-over-year amount, with the addition of the $6,120 for the carryovers for licenses that Ray needs for his crew. Ray, please jump in if I'm mixing up my words here with your department.
You're doing good, David.
Great. Plain and simple for conventions, flatlined based on last year's approved budget. 21 versus 22 is $2,600. Last year they spent nothing. Moving along, uniform and clothing, no real surprises there, other than what wasn't done this year is being done this year. You'll see that we were slightly over budget. 21 budgeted 1,200, 21 actuals was 1,475. And Ray, the uptick from 1,200 to 2,060. Additional wear, I think the wear is more than it once was in 2020.
Yes, because there'll be new recruits and stuff getting dressed for it.
Is that correct, Ray?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Moving along now, we're into memberships. It's flatlined again. We're under budget, 21 budget versus 21 actuals. 21 budget 35,555 and 2,400. So essentially we're $1,100 under budget again. It assumes flatline carryover 35.25. We're now into materials and supplies. Under budget again by $5,000. This year, 8,500 is what I have budgeted for material and supplies. Moving on to office supplies. Ray, you must be buying too much stationery there. You spent an extra $256 last year.
Yes, I did.
I don't think he likes my dry sense of humor. This year, I gave it a slight uptick to $2,200. That can go either way. I don't think it's imperative, but with inflation, with the uptick and the cost of goods, that's the rationale there. Moving along, advertising in general, under budget by half, $400 is the gap. I assumed $800, which is the approved budget amount for 20 and 21. Postage and courier services, nothing spent. The typical $150 is what's assumed there. I noticed that there's a lot of postage within departments that have $0 spent. So administration is picking up the slack on that sort of communication. Moving along, now we're into communications. Communications, I left flat. We are under budget, 21 budget versus actuals. You'll see the 10,444 versus 97,96. Heat and oil, really, I think that's been haircutted too closely. 4,400 is the budget last year. We're under this year. I would like to, with Ray's acknowledgement, get that bump back up from 3,000 to likely 4,000 to get closer to the 3,826. Same theme with hydro again, under budget by 1,000. Should probably at least cover the 21 actuals. It's assumed that water and sewer is flat. It's been flat across budget and actuals. It's 1716. We're now into some agreements that we have. Budgeted 22,000. We're under budget, budget versus actuals, and it's assumed that there's a slight uptick.
Can I ask a question if we go back to water and sewer, David?
Yes, please.
We actually have to pay water and sewer for fire help.
You're right on that, I want to say. That is a good question. I believe that's actually returned to us at the end, but I can write that down and firm that up. So,
I ask you a question.
yes, please.
I have to go back to the heat.
Okay.
I know it's 3,000, but with it's not going to come in at that because everything's going up terribly, and in fact, we don't even know how much it's going to be. I was informed by the propane company that it was going to be over $1 a liter. You know, or less than 80 cents, and so it's a wild one there. I think we're gonna have to bump that one up for sure.
Okay.
And then the hydro gotta at least have the actual from last year, and I would imagine it's going up too.
Hydro last year we have it at 1537, under budget, but to your point, there likely needs to be a bit of a buffer for the inflation that's rising. Hopefully the interest rate increase that the central bank is going to do will slow that, but that's going to take time.
That's for sure.
Yes.
We won't notice it this year.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, no, thank you for your questions. Please keep them coming in. I'll get questions. Moving along now, we're into the agreements. Again, assume flat year over year, under budget. I don't think the agreement rates will change in principle. Ray, please interject if you see that differently. Communications, under budget by 10,000. I did take Councilor's previous suggestion on getting a theme here and accounting for the inflation. It's at 45,000 and today's budget. Open to people's feedback on communications.
Question to Ray on the dispatcher. Are we changing dispatch?
No, we won't be changing dispatching. The only thing that might get changed is our paging, and we're still working on that. And I'd also like to note that I just coded and signed a few bills will fall under this that I don't believe, David, came out of this. I just did them. I just got them last week and I just handed them in at the end of the week.
Okay.
So there's probably some more money coming out of this.
Got it. Okay, I'll circle around with the front office and make sure that's baked in there.
Because there's I don't know, I got word from one of the other fire departments, and they said that it's astronomical, the charges this year. So It's something I want to check on.
Okay. Yeah. Duly noted. Okay, we're moving on past communications now, and Ray, I've made notes on the changing dispatcher, the pagers, and your updated agreements that you signed last week. We are now on page 5 of 10. We're into some insurance topics here. I assumed it to be flat year over year. We're under budget just slightly. Might be a little too close to the sun on that to assume it's flat 21 budget versus 22 budget. What is the senses on adding 3 to 5% to the 37,310?
Well, if I may, David, council went through an insurance thing here not too long ago. I don't know when our contract's up, Bob. If that would even make a difference, so I'm not opposed to going up a few percentage points.
Okay.
But I think we're locked in at something for the next couple of years.
I believe that's correct.
I'll confirm that. Yeah.
Okay, Hart, you had something?
Yeah, well, I don't know, I'm on the back page, which is more of the kind of the summary. And I'm just looking at the last couple of years, and we're over budgeting this department by close to, am I right, David? Close to $100,000 every year?
I'll scroll down there now, Hart. Yes, that's correct. 561 budget in 2022, 561,000, 654,000. We are under budget significantly by the tune of $130,000.
So, I mean, we're talking in the 15% range here that we're consistently over budgeting for in this department. So, I mean, like in terms of, we're talking about raising hydro and that, and I guess you can do this in the numbers later, but the money's there. To me, we're just over budgeting for it year after year. And to me, like, it's one thing to over budget $20,000 or $30,000, but $100,000 on like a $600,000 budget, I don't like, does this happen normally? Because it just seems way out of what I understand. Like 1 year you can get stuff and we didn't buy something, but this is just consistently rolling in at 15%.
I would agree with you on that. In theory, in reality, where you've had a global pandemic since May 2022 or 2020, excuse me, we're now on over 2 years of it. And I don't think anyone knew up from down, left from right during the pandemic as to how that was going to unfold. Now, in fairness to you, Hart, I'm sure if we look back at 18 and 19, the theme is likely there pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So duly noted.
That's all I'm getting at, because if somebody's going to watch this
on the pandemic and what we didn't know was around the corner, I'd say yes. But yeah, your point is noted.
Yeah, and I know, like, we might know a little bit more than the public in terms of what some of these departments might need further down the road. But I mean, just from someone watching this at home, that would be my question: is why are you budgeting? I can understand, a 5-6% buffer there for your reserve or whatever, but it's just consistently year over year, we're looking at probably 15%.
Yeah. Now, if we look at line by line here, what's generating that? The total revenue from the fire department, operating expenses, relatively flat on the budget numbers, but we were under budget by a significant amount. Now, is that because people were staying at home? There were less calls. People weren't out on the roads as much last year. Ray, can you give us your opinion on that?
Well, I would just like to add, your 2021 actuals is the actual what we have spent to date, correct?
Yes, to be at year end, December 31st.
So you got to counter in all, like the generator, like I think that was 25 grand or something, or not quite 25 grand, 12 or 13 grand. There's all that to go in to that actuals that is going to bump that 485,000. It's going to bump that up, correct?
Yes. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. Yeah. I'll look at what was pre-approved Capex wise, which there's a short list, which they would then even that out more on the pre-approved stuff, which should be rolling through there, or the carryover stuff, simply to put it.
Yeah, and like I just said, also, like I just coded some invoices there the end of last week for still 2021 that's got to come out of there. So that number is going to change quite a little bit. The actuals.
I'll revisit that and have a summary on the iteration of that, or the uptick on stuff that was approved but not spent, to make sure we're on the same playing field there.
Okay.
I'll scroll back up. I think we're on page 6 here, 6 of 10. So I don't want to lose people's attention here. We're now into medical supplies, I believe. We can go over the Jamboree quickly. We went over insurance. We're now in the Jamboree. I'm sure the Jamboree will happen this year. So I kept the budget flat year over year at $1,200 for meals and miscellaneous expenses. We're now into medical supplies. Under budget, 4,500 versus the 2,800 assumed. A slight uptick from 4,500 to 4,800, 21 budget versus 2022. Any objections there?
Oh,
We're
just a question.
79976.
Correct, David. Yes, sir. Councillor Giroux.
Dave, what did you say there? We didn't hear that.
The actuals for 2021 were 2.79976.
Yes.
The 2022 budget is 4,800.
Yes. That's assuming the public's out more engaged, there are more instances, there are the economy and people are coming back to life here and getting out of the COVID coma. It's an assumption. Can go either way, but it's important that we get this theme right as we look at the post-pandemic 2022.
We're not far off before.
Okay, well, I'll move along, and of course we'll tweak it.
Art had something there.
Art?
Yeah, no, just kind of what Dave was getting at for the actual number. The next, like the 4,800 is quite a bit higher. I understood your explanation there, David. But do we have, if that's our actual from 2021, what's the actual from 2020? Like, I mean, do we have a number that's around 45 or 4,800, or are we just once again throwing a number out there and asking for it?
Yeah, as we're talking here, I'll pull up the 2020 actual. It's a good question. Let's see if we can get that comparative analysis there. I'll multitask here, and Ray, by all means, step in if you people are getting tired of hearing my voice. Fire prevention, again, same theme. I kept it flat, 21 versus 2022, but we're again half under budget for that. Ray, do you see that activity?
Okay, I have another question
Fire
here.
prevention?
Art, you had,
Yeah, well, no, I was just, well, kind of David's point, if Ray's there, why would we have asking for 4,800 on that, Ray? Like, what's the,
On the medical end, Hart?
yeah, why, like, you know, I don't, like David said, things will go up, I expect that, but I mean, in the past, we're just a little high there, so I'm wondering, like, is there something I'm missing, or?
Like David said, things are going to open up. We were down on a little things,
Okay.
like for medical calls and stuff like that, but I'm also waiting. I've ordered stuff way back last year, like the end of summer, middle of fall, and I
Okay.
still have not even received it yet.
Oh, okay, so that's, okay, I got you,
Yeah.
so that's, some of that's gonna be held against it, so,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along now, we're now into software. Software budgeted 1,500, nothing spent last year, and I assumed it to be flat year over year. Going into now equipment and supplies. Same theme again here. We're almost half under budget, and I assumed it to be flat year over year in terms of 21 budget versus 2022. Moving in now to equipment repairs and maintenance. Ray, it'd be great to get your take on some of this. I know there was some things that are an absolute must. Ray, in equipment repairs and maintenance, what in there is a need for your department?
Everything in 5811, that has to be, that's annual safeties, pump tests, the air compressor certification. That's basically every year stuff that has to be done annually.
Okay. I'll give counselors a minute to run through 5811 to see if there's any. And while we're doing that, I'll jump up and grab that last number that you wanted to hurt.
Sorry about that.
It looked like in 5811, David, that everything in there is stuff that has to happen. So there's not really any choice there.
Okay. Sounds good. So year over year, Hart, to your point, we're essentially half of the 2,500 2020 budget versus 2021 budget. So we're now on 8 of 10 slides here. We're going into equipment repairs and maintenance, which we just stepped through. We're now into building repair. There was a great amount at 17,621, spent less than half of that, and it's budgeted for 2,500 for 5831 building repair. Same thing with cleaning supplies, under budget. I assumed it not to be the 21 level, but the 2020 budget at 1,700 for cleaning supplies. Now we're on to capital expenses. A large increase from 21 to 2022. In terms of carryovers, there's a total of 19,000 that was approved that is flowing through into 2022. Ray, is there anything in there that isn't a need?
So in the capital, David?
Yes, on 5999.
Yeah.
I know we discussed the hoses. Didn't sound like there was much.
The hoses
are radios are already bought. The portable pump was an absolute must. The cutter charges and batteries, I don't think it sounded like those were a want, it was a need.
Yes.
Please stop me, Ray, if I'm
No, go ahead.
the truck. The truck, is that a need or a want, Ray?
The truck's more of a want, I guess.
Right. So I'll drop that.
So the truck was,
you can of course revisit that at a later time.
so I just wanted to ask, that truck, has it been budgeted for as far as a part of the schedule that we have, or is that a new truck?
It would be new, Jim.
New truck. Ray, I better still get a Christmas card if I drop that off now.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would summarize the capital expenses. We're now getting to the bottom line here. At least you'll see how the model flows and how it's built up. We're now into Cordova on operational items. Under budget by 2,000. I assume there was an uptick from 6,100 to 6,900, essentially. You could say that's conservative. And to Hart's point, you're over budgeting again. We can certainly sharpen our pencils, Hart, and the rest of council as we go forward.
Hart, go ahead.
Well, just to that, like, I'm not trying to pick on Ray here because it is a hard job. Like, there are things there that I imagine he doesn't know. I know I sure as hell don't know how much these things cost. But at the same time, when it's just one of those things when it keeps happening year after year, and I'll go as far as to say this is probably our past treasurer hasn't been helping a lot of these department heads in terms of maybe some of this budgeting and what numbers they should be looking for. But I mean, moving forward, you know, I think, I don't know, I'll just speak for myself. For a lot of this, you should be looking at maybe 5, no more than 10% on some of this stuff, more closer to 5. But a lot of these, you know, and I haven't got to the other departments yet, but I imagine they're the same. We just kind of keep asking for 2% over what we asked for last year, which isn't the game, you know? So I think we just need to, as David said, maybe sharpen our pencils but I'm not, as I said, I'm not trying to pick on Ray, because I think there's been circumstances here in the past that have probably hindered the budget process. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. No, it's noted. You can pick on me as much as Ray, if not more.
No, you're doing fine, David.
Thank you. So now we're in the final page here of fire. We're now into emergency management, education, training, membership, materials and supplies. Not much spent out of actuals on this, and assumed it was flat year over year, 21 versus 2022. Also for civic addressing posts and signs, we spent half, and it's assumed it's flat year over year for the budget. So seeing how we dropped out Ray's truck, we're now down to the 3% threshold for budgeting purposes, 21 versus 2022. Or 2.8 actually, sounds a little better. Which would just be above Peterborough County's budget that passed last week.
So that's good, David, and we can, the council can go through the binders following the meeting and see if there's anything there, and they can question Ray as far as some of the items in there. If there's any more movement, we can work on it between now and the next meeting.
So, sounds great. I'll circle back with Ray as well, and look forward to getting closer to a comfortable number in theory.
Thank you.
Ray, would you like to go over your equipment replacement schedule that has the outward looking view on your strategic asset plan? Or is that something you'd like to save for the Capex part later in the budget meeting?
Entirely up to council.
That's something I think we can go through the binder and see where we're at. Is there any vehicles from that schedule, Ray, that are being replaced this year?
No, there isn't. No vehicles.
Okay. So the other things in there that are anything that's for this year, like I say, this is an introduction meeting. So once we all go through the binder and see things of question, we can come and see you and see if there's some, when we get into the wants and needs, if there's any movement that we can do to try and sharpen our pencil a little more. So I think for today, it's just to receive this this part of the budget and and keep working on it.
Sounds good. In conversation with Ray, the reason why this is brought up in the terms of this 10-year replacement schedule is the fire trucks will take as long as 2 or 3 years from order to delivery. It's a long process that those global supply chain issues with the pandemic hasn't helped. So that Ray's looking to get ahead of it. Year over year, we've replenished the reserves specifically for this purpose, but want to put it on the radar as we step through the budget process.
Well, I think like everything, we've done our best to put away enough in the reserves to be able to purchase all these things without a spike. But I think with the pandemic, there's going to be some adjustments have to be made to make up for some of the extra costs like we've seen with everything else. So we'll do the best we can, and hopefully it works out in the end, right?
Sounds good. I'll let people choose the next department. What would you like next?
I was just going down the list here, David, and we'll do the best we can today. And the next item was library.
Library, okay.
Which one is that? Which?
Number 13.
13? Okay, we're reading the next. Oh,
13, so in conversation with Barry, understand the library is flat year over year. Barry's done a good job at keeping them on point. So there won't be any surprises here in the library section as we step through. Can everyone see my shared screen still?
Yep.
Okay, great. Top down, I'm in the revenue section. It's assumed that the provincial grant, which has been answered year over year at the same level of 2773, comes in again this year. I dropped out the miscellaneous revenue. We could certainly add that back in. Ultra conservative here on the transfer from reserves. I cut that down. Hart, you'll be happy to see that, down to minus 12,000. And year over year, we would be under budget. You'll see 21 budget versus actual, or again, almost half. And rather than going back up to 41,493 in the 2022 budget, it's been cut by nearly 10,000 to 32,000. Barry, you know this department best, so please, your direction is appreciated. Moving along then into the Havelock Library expenses. This is the summary. Wages, there is the uptick for inflation on wages. That's why you'll see the increase from 58,000 to 60,000. Same theme with the benefits. Minimal. Unsure if there's going to be a summer student in this year, but we're certainly going to push for that. We assume the membership happens again this year. I'm now on SOLS membership 2,500, just under budget, assumes that is flat. As we step through the remaining library expenses for Havelock, you'll see that it's flat year over year, 21 versus 2022 budget. Please stop me at any point, as I did get an uptick for communications. Having said that, I saw that the 21 actuals rolled up to 4,000, but yet we spent 5,900. 21 budget versus 21 actuals. So I did give that an uptick to 6,300 in 2022. That was rational. Audit, again, flat. Insurance, a slight uptick to 4,450. Miscellaneous, the same. And I won't talk any further as that's repetitive. But you'll see 21 budget versus 2022, we're below 146 versus 137, having spent only 110,000 in 21 actuals. Same thing with wages internally. I should have given an uptick from 1,300 with 3%. Materials and communications is the same. So with all that in mind, Barry, your department's minus 0.5% year over year. That's good. Yeah.
So Barry, did anything come out of there as far as, I know at the Kosh Lake Library, they've been asking to get some Wi-Fi up there. Has anything been looked at with regards to that?
I don't think so, Jim. The last time we inquired, there was no service right there.
Okay. All right then. Well, I think they were, yeah, so I don't know. Anyways, that might be something of a future meeting, but it's just, I did get that request again, so. But if
And furthermore to that, the library up there is used more for the cottage association. And they don't like actually our library personnel being there. They want to look after it themselves, so I don't know how we're gonna look after that in the future years, but it's I know when we send a student up there, the printer of the student crying the last time a couple of years ago. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that because we've got a pretty good budget here in the library side of it for Havelock and Cordova. And
okay.
whatever happens back north, there's somebody's gonna have to figure it out.
Okay. Fine. I just keep hearing that it's another one of the libraries that doesn't seem to get listed, so.
And there's not much usage there either for the library portion.
All right, I'll leave it at that for now anyways. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Jim, any other questions on library before we move on?
No, I don't have any. Does anybody there have any questions? Can't get much better than that, so, okay. So Bob, do you want just one motion to receive, or do you want to receive each of these individual reports for today?
No, through you, Mayor Martin, one motion at the end will be fine.
Okay. All right, we'll move into cemetery then.
Okay. Cemetery, happy to report there's no change year over year, which has been consistent. It's
Tab 10.
I'm going backwards.
Yeah.
It's run efficiently, it's on point, it's flat year over year. If there are no questions there, we can move
Just
on.
a question. So the 63,000, that's taxation then?
Yes.
Okay. The one thing that we've been doing in a lot of other departments, and we don't control this one, but it would be nice to see them go out to tender. Excuse me, go out to tender on the maintenance end of things, just to see if there's any better prices out there. As much as everything's going up, a lot of things have changed there, and it's just something that I think eventually they need to go out and check it out once in a while. It should be done every 5 years. So, but I'll leave that with Larry.
Sounds good. What's next, Jim?
Okay, I'm just going by Bob's agenda. So the next one is Crow Valley.
Okay. Crow Valley was fairly straightforward.
Excuse me, David, there doesn't seem to be a tab for Crow Valley.
Oh, I've got conservation HBM. Tab 4.
Number 11, sorry.
11.
And it's pretty straight, like you said.
Number
Number 12 on mine.
Huh.
22 conservation budget, 22 HBM.
Can everyone see it? If otherwise, I do have the tab in front of me here. Sorry, the indexing is off on a couple of books or binders. It's relatively flat year over year. Sticking to the 3% increase. Reviewed the budget draft that the conservation put out that was since approved. I did reach out to them. I haven't heard back from them yet. That sounds a bit weak, but I certainly want to get a complete picture of how they're budgeting, and I want to better understand the business and how it's integrated into HBM. That's my own wish as I speak out loud here, but no real concerns other than there was some issues that Bob and I discussed earlier. We are the main paying person or group within the three. Do we have any latitude, any ability to change that, Bob, or am I getting off topic here?
No, you're getting off topic.
Okay.
It's a totally different discussion, and we've had that in previous years, but
I'll let sleeping dogs lie there. Sorry, the memory cell got jarred there.
It's done on an
So as we
assessment.
move along, we're into animal control. It's another straightforward one. I did speak to Debbie, I believe that her name is. Debbie doesn't sound like the type of person that you'd want to misstep with.
David, if you could just hold on a second.
Yes.
So I do believe some of our tabs are different.
so tab 6, animal control.
Okay. So that is up 12. I'm going back. So,
Yeah.
thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Tab 6, if we get down to the bottom, 2.97% is the increase year over year. Relatively straightforward. Other than there was a discussion I had with Debbie on the Peterborough Humane Society. It's now a fee for service. There's a bit of a buffer in the budget to address that. Really, that comes under 5366 in the contracts. I don't see that as a concern, neither does Debbie. She is sourcing other people locally that would be able to take in a dog that needs a kennel, as it's hopefully being re-owned or given an appropriate home. It's that lull or that gap that Debbie looks to fill, and is dependent on the Humane Society. Otherwise, it's fairly straightforward, unless there are any questions that you want me to take away and follow up. You'll see actual versus budget, we're under again. Year over year in 2022, with all the pets that were bought during COVID. I think there's going to be a spike in pets that are up for adoption. That's my own opinion, but that's the animal control section that's under 3% year over year.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Wages, part-time,
Mhm.
we went from 21 actuals to 24, up to 4,600.
Yes, I looked at that same question that you asked, Counselor, and I used the budget number of 4,500 and applied the rate adjustment for inflation. I will ask Debbie why her hours, or why she billed us for 2,400 when we budgeted 4,500, and I'll have an answer as to whether that's reasonable or not.
yeah, I think it's something that we're gonna have to be careful with because of the last 2 years and what we've been dealing with. That some of the numbers aren't realistic just because of what people were up to. So we just got to be watched. I think you're smart to, look at the 2020 budget and carry it up from there. But 2021 does look low. I'm sure there's a reason.
Appreciate it. Benefits were left flat year over year. I took a look at that, and all the benefits were falling below by 50% across the board on 2021 actuals. You'll see the budget 21,7550 versus the actual at 5,655. Can likely sharpen our pencil on that, other than the contracts. The contracts is where Debbie's dependent on third parties to adopt and take care of these pets while they're being funding a new home.
So when I look at it, Dave,
Yes.
mileage, she used $786 last year.
Mhm.
So that could account for, there wasn't that many calls, why we only paid her $2,425.
Mhm. Fair.
Like, that's the way I'm looking at it anyway. It's
Mhm. And to Councillor Pomeroy's point, the 2022 mileage didn't go back to 1,500, it went down to 1,200. I'll circle back with Debbie and run the numbers by her for a final vet. No pun intended on the vet reference. If there are any other questions, we'll move on now to administration. Bob's department.
It looks like he's at the theater here. He's eating his chips and watching the video presentation here.
So I'll give you I'll hold off the suspense and let you know what Bob's department is. And before
Yeah, now for the tough one. We've had the easy ones, now the administration.
Is everyone on the right tab? Okay, I'll start top down here just a second. second. Okay, I'll jump back up here 1 second, gentlemen. I just noticed that something didn't roll through correctly in this department. Stop that. Okay, top down here. Starting the top on what we assume for reserve transfers in.
Sharing the screen now, David.
Oh no, okay. So just one technical difficulties here.
Join the virtual.
My belly's too big. I can't read fast.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Bob, are you one of these? Or are you one of those?
I think I want to, yeah. It depends. Usually the magnifying glass.
You had a question?
Okay, sorry, the Wi-Fi just dropped there. Bianca's getting it sorted. Okay, I think we're back. Top down, it was assumed that we are drawing in from the reserve, which is different year over year. We're at minus 75,000. The first thing that comes to mind as we look at this is the potential of adding on an economic development officer. That would offset that, and then there's some other costs associated with administration in 2022. Bob, I'll let you touch on those as we go through. It is assumed that the funding, or rather the OCIF formula, we are going to get that again here this year. I'm now in the revenue grants, rebates, principal, interest, and penalties. A big revenue generator for this department. We're well ahead of what we budgeted in 21 by the tune of almost $300,000. That's a good problem to have. This year we are basically between 2021 budget and actuals at 1.864 million.
So David, the OCIF, is that the grant that we received for modernization?
Correct.
Okay.
Moving along now into the expense line. And what assumptions are being made here, and the transfers to reserves that are now deemed to be an expense. We didn't allocate as much to date anyways. It's worth mentioning that the actual 2021 numbers are approximations. Those are finalized. They'll be finalized once our accountant finishes the 2021 audit. Moving forward here on the transfers into the reserves, that being the federal gas tax, the general capital, and the reserve admin. We'll go over what the reserves levels are after this caption here, this part of the presentation. Going into wages, nothing was spent on the part-time student. Bob, will we be getting a student in this year?
Yes, David, we'll have to put a number in there for 2022. We have applied for a grant for a student, but there will be a municipal contribution to that.
Great, okay. I'll make note of that. Splits usually 50-50, is it? Grant versus municipality?
I believe that's correct. I'll double check that.
Okay, very good. Same theme with the rate for inflation adjustment across the benefits. And another theme here with mileage, there's a healthy budget of 4,000, which I'll input in there. But no dollars were charged, or no kilometers were charged to that account. Education and training, again, people didn't use that available budgeted money. We'll blame COVID, seems to be the thing to do. This year, education and training, I would assume goes back to that level, Bob.
Yeah, and cycling back to mileage is the same. I mean, mileage, we didn't go anywhere because
Yes.
of COVID. Everything was done on Zoom. It's possible that as things open up, there may be some mileage for seminars or meetings or what have you.
Understood. Conventions, no dollars spent. We'll get that number back up to the 2021 budget number. Memberships, we did renew all memberships, which you'll see the 21 budget versus 21 actuals is flat. And it's assumed that we commit to the memberships again in 5240. Materials and supplies, under budget by 9,000. I'll leave that flat year over year. Can certainly look at what was spent in 2020 actuals to make sure that we're not getting too comfortable in our budgeting. Photocopier is our replacement one is on the radar. We're stepping through that, getting multiple quotes from multiple vendors. We'll come back. Basically, what we're paying for a copier today, we can get 2 copiers and still be paying less for the single one that we have, which is continually down every 2 weeks, it seems. Xerox is the one that's of particular interest with great service that has every other municipality's business in this region. Moving along now into economic development, and you'll see the top line being the hiring of the economic development person. The bandwidth and the title is a work in progress. 60 to 70,000 is what's been suggested for this
That's
person.
there. So that not being a new position, it was replacing a position that we had in other columns. It's, you know, it's been kind of carried forward. I take it that was taken right out.
It could. Now, in the keystone references that I have, this in 4320 actuals, there is not a wage that's been injected into this department. It might be a fact, Jim, that it's rolling up into full-time employee category. I'll make sure that we're not double counting, to your point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, so it's noted. I carved out an extra GL for this, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
And Bob, and the rest of council, you know, hiring an economic development person, you know, where are we going here? You know, economic development, we can't do any economic development. We don't have the sewers available to expand. We don't have we do have the water. It's gonna have to spend a little money on that. But as far as growing our municipality, we're basically at a standstill. All the lots in town, and
That's not what economic development is completely about, though, Barry. It's just not about homes.
that's maybe why we should have some meetings and some conversation on this, Jim, rather than, you know, a one-man Dewey here to make a decision. I still maintain that we don't have enough correspondence between council and yourself to know what's really going on. And if we warrant one, that's fine. But if we don't, that's wants and needs. I don't want to hire someone to do nothing. But you tell me, you know, we'll get together on some of this stuff. and tell me why we really need one.
I think it was discussed at the last council meeting. It's been discussed over the last 6 months that we're short a person. And anyways, it's in there right now. Whether it stays in there, that'll be decided over the next couple of weeks here. But I'm just saying, it's not all about houses. It's about all the other things that we need to do to get up to speed here. So it might not stay in there, but it's in there right now.
Yep, all right, that's why I say we'd like some discussion to know where it's going and why do we have to have it.
Okay,
Okay, Art, did you have something?
Well, not on that. I just had a question about the CIP allocation for David.
yeah, I'll scroll up there now. Go for it, Hart.
Well, I think you and I discussed, but we're gonna put $25,000 in there to top that up.
Into which account? Give me the account number, please.
Oh, God, you had it up there just a minute ago before you moved everything.
Yeah, just 1 second.
Go back to where we just were with for the economic development position. It was in
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I'll get there 1 second here. Yeah, I'm there now. Yes.
Yeah, the second from the bottom.
Okay. Right,
So,
the $25,000 plan. Yes, yes, you're
To
right.
you, I think we've had discussions with council on this, in that when we brought the CIP in, oh God, 5 years ago now, maybe, we initially put $25,000 in that account. I'll just speak for myself. I was of the understanding that when money was taken out of that, so if we in the first year we used 10,000, that come the budget the next year, that would be topped up back to 25,000. So we'd put that 10 back in. We've since found out that that hasn't happened over the past number of years. So I know we're down to probably maybe even less than $1,000 in that account, and we do have CIP applications. There's at least one that is on the desk at the moment. So I'll just letting the rest of council be aware of that. Well, I will be asking for that in the budget for that project. So.
Yeah, I can speak to that through you, Mayor Martin. We did in our budget notes. Yes, we were targeting 25,000 to go into that account.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay,
What account number is that, Bob?
It's number 0111105320.
under the economic development.
CIP.
Do you see it?
Yep.
Yep, okay, great. So with that adjustment, with the adjustment to the new hiring of the person and the CIP plan, we are at a 6 times increase, 21 budget versus 2022 budget. So we'll try and offset that through reserves, through any other means, before we get to what the actual tax increases will be.
And through, sorry, if I can interrupt there,
Yes.
Through you, Mayor Martin. Some smaller items, but still money, still dollars on the table. Canada Day fireworks, Canada Day supplies. We have applied for a grant for Canada Day, and it is possible that those numbers could be offset.
David, if I go back.
Yes, please.
I shouldn't go back, I just saw it now.
Okay.
I talked about it, I shouldn't go backwards, but hiring an economic development person, that 68,750 did that number come from our old economic development officer?
Roughly through the old salary range, that's correct. We were roughly targeting 60 to 70. We might be a little bit light there, but yes, roughly from the previous.
I wasn't thinking like that, I was thinking the other way.
No, previous salary, yes, from the previous person.
Yeah, 'cause that was more of a task and job that salary was based on.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
So one of the things that, is it in the administration that the website would be in, upgrades to the website?
You bet. No, thanks for honing in on that, Jim. It's down in account 5999. We'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so I don't think there's any other surprises until we get down to the that particular account. But let's move on. Communications, no surprises there. Nearly on point budget versus actuals and what we forecasted for this year's budget. Legal, we're now in external services, which is mostly legal here. Legal is an interesting one. I realize the position of municipalities and when we must call on our legal advice. It depends. I think some years can be quiet and other years can be quite hectic. That's the reason why there's a bit of a buffer in there, why we gave the uptick year over year versus the two budgets. Most
So
recently.
David, for council's clarity, is that legal budget, is that legal for all departments?
No, just ours.
Because we did create a legal budget last year.
Okay. I'll note that, Bob, and make sure again that we're not double counting. Okay. And moving in now to agreements. I like the fact that it's relatively consistent, flat, and predictable year over year. We're in 5365 agreements.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, yeah.
CPR, what do we rent from CPR and what piece? No, I know. I think I know, but I'm not sure.
Is it the water pumping area there?
I don't know. I don't know whether that's covered through the Lions, whether they rent that property or not.
I think that's what it is, but we'll confirm that.
Okay,
David, if you can make a note of that,
Yes.
what that lease cost is, I believe it is that property.
okay.
Okay, it's noted. I'll have that answered by the next meeting date. We're now into insurance, lease payments, bank charges, tax write-offs, and uncollectible accounts. There is a spread there, or a difference, not as consistent as the departments leading up to this. The uptick insurance is real. Lease payments has been left relatively flat. It is consistent year over year. Bank charges, we have a good handle on what our bank charges are. Likely a bit too healthy. If we're at 3,200, it's highly improbable that the bank, or TD Bank for that matter, is going to go up by $1,800. Happy to revisit that. The way that will change is if we get another service in. I know we're going to be doing more EFTs, which are more expensive but more efficient. EFTs is electronic fund transfer that can happen instantaneously, and it avoids our front office writing manual checks. Manual checks are it's double handling, checks get lost, people claim they didn't get their checks. It's a real pain. So if you look at the opportunity cost, our front office staff that have to run checks every week versus doing an EFT, it makes sense. When you look at the so what will allow us to do EFTs more frequently is when Keystone catches up and allows us to do this from an accounts payable. So anyway, sorry to go off on my banking knowledge there.
Larry has a question there.
Yes, please.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, Dave pretty much answered the question by the time I've got a chance to speak here. But the banking institution we deal with, I think there was a number of changes made in the last year for an efficiency gain. And so I question the number that we have in the line budget there, the line item of that topic for
Yeah,
banking.
no, the 3213, I'll absolutely look into that. You've got to, I mean, I worked in commercial banking for the Royal Bank and for CIBC in a previous life. I know the inner workings of banking. I'm full of useless information when it comes to banking. So for banks to continually, sorry, there's some laughter going on here. For banks to have,
Yeah.
be in a low interest environment for the last 2 years and be generating the profits that they're generating makes you ask how they're doing that. Really, they drive their frontline people harder, they cut, they fire people, and they increase fees. So sorry to go off on a tangent there, but I will definitely look at that.
But I think through you again, Mr. Mayor, I think there was some changes again over the last year of how we were doing business with the bank and changed some of those things that we recognized some efficiency gains there.
Yeah, no, definitely noted, and I'll have an answer on that. I'll break it out across fee services. We should revisit our agreement with the bank at least once a year to try and keep them honest. It sounds like it's already been done, but let's see where we are this year. There were no uncollectible accounts to speak of in 2021. So I'll move on now, unless there's any questions.
One question.
Yes, please.
No uncollectible accounts, does that take in taxes?
Yes.
It does,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep an eye on, and there's a slide in the fundamental financial indicator session upcoming that addresses that year over year, what it's been historically and what we might see it going forward. You're really looking at a crystal ball, but it's important. We're going into strange times with the pandemic. So
Thank you.
yeah. Moving along now, the next account, we see it to be again reduced. Hart, you're probably about to fall off your chair again as we've over budgeted. I assumed it to be flat 21 versus 2022 budget. I can certainly look to see if that is something we can get closer to on.
Which account is that?
That's 5602.
5602, that's the hydro.
Hucklebug.
Yeah, 50% share.
Mhm.
Okay,
So
why is it 50% share?
Bob, can you explain that relationship?
They're not there. And their contract was up in this year,
in April.
in April, yeah.
Okay, I'll clarify that account for next meeting. We're now into computer material supplies, watchdog replacement 5802. First service that jumps out there is MicroAge. I think we're reasonably happy with MicroAge. I want to say that with a grain of salt, flat year over year, but at a crucial, critical service to our business and the day-to-day operations. We're below $8,000 year over year. Assumed it to be relatively flat in the 2022 budgeting. Any other questions there, or?
I'm good.
We get anything new in computers coming out this year, another program or? No. Because some, we start to get behind too with some of these programs. And
Right.
I don't know how often we should, step into the next.
It's a valid point, Councillor Pomeroy, that you're making. We are in the process of establishing a replacement schedule for our electronic devices, computers, laptops,
Yeah.
those kind of things. We've not had that in the past, not a specific replacement schedule.
Yep.
So I think in order to consistently budget properly for these kind of things. Don't wait for everything to just fall apart and then replace. We'll try to keep them rolling through on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah.
So that's a work in progress, but we are doing that.
So it isn't in this budget now?
Not sure if it's in this budget. I don't believe that it is as of this moment.
Okay.
But something we're gonna look at.
Yeah, I thoroughly think that you should, because you have to keep up with the times.
100%. Yeah, thank you.
Do they know, we do have $20,000 left in the COVID grant that we can use for COVID related things. Telecommunications, our phone systems are quite aged and cause our front office staff to have to run around, find people, and people miss calls. We have a vendor that's been identified. It's minimal expense, but I think we make our day-to-day go a lot easier and can justify that using the COVID grant.
Yeah.
The
Right,
idea.
so further to your point, Councillor Conroy, that's a good point. Treasurer just made. We are investigating the replacement of our phone system. We were given a grant for those types of things to assist with COVID activities. Our phone system is quite antiquated, is malfunctioning quite often. So I think that is something that it is included in these
We got
numbers.
hoodwinkle on that one when we got it. It was
Yes, so I'm told, yes.
Yeah. We got it.
So the OCIF, so Bob, the OCIF grant that we received, that's for modernization, and some people are using it for, I thought, for phone systems and websites.
That's correct. That is correct.
And that'll bring in the online building permits too?
That is correct. We can use it for that as well.
All right.
We're almost getting down to the final of HPM's budgeting here. And
Sorry, further to
Yes.
Mayor Martin's comment, asset management software is also included in that grant.
yes, let's scroll down to the bottom in 599. I think we'll find it there, Bob.
Okay.
The other thing that is a wish, maybe not a need, would be budgeting software, but I think we'll save that one for a rainy day. Bob, is that fair?
Well, it's fair. We'll see what it does to our number here.
Okay.
but-
Okay, so we're now into 5810. It's a small account. I like the fact that it's balanced year over year. We're not 50% below and then swinging back up again. Not much needs to be said in that regard. Same thing with supplies. I like that it's reasonably flat. We are $900 over and it's assumed flat year over year. Don't like the fact that the 5831 Keystone isn't pulling through these expenses. Need to double check that, although as we step down through that list, I see that likely all the boxes were checked as long as the extinguishers aren't expected annually or not. Heating and AC equipment, I believe, is already replaced. Lunchroom one-time cost, and then our security system annual monitoring, I would see that being a cost that should have carried forward into the 2021 budget. So I will make sure that 5831 is apples to apples.
Yeah, I have a question on that one too.
Please.
The heating equipment, did we not replace 3 furnaces?
We did, and that was done. Question is, we probably paid for that in 2022. We may not have actually paid for that yet, depending on the terms. It's net 30 days. That would actually be 2022 actual.
Well,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. So yeah, good point though. Yeah.
that thought it happened before Christmas,
Mhm.
but I guess the billing starts.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No. Thank you.
That
Thanks for
clears
keeping.
that up for me.
No, thanks for keeping us on our toes there. No. Okay. And we're now into cleaning. Flat. I have to admit, our cleaner here in this office certainly does a great job. Credit where credit's due, relatively flat year over year. Property taxes, Huckabug. 178 actuals, assumed relatively flat year over year. We're now getting into capital expenses. The 2021 actuals is large, and the reason why that's so skewed is because Midstation was purchased for nearly 680,000. I think that number is right in my head. That's the reason why you go for 21 budget to 21 actuals, right? It's such so skewed. 2022 budget more on point, returning back to the levels around 129,000. You'll see what is above and beyond here is the SHRP, which is a third-party human resource provider. Bob, do you want to speak to the group on this proposal?
SHRP is a human resources consulting firm that effectively acts as your human resources department. That is a want, not a need, but if it fits in, they're folks that can help us with the whole gamut, the entire gamut of human resources activity, from recruiting to training to listing of all staff training. So it is something that would be of value to us. We get excellent feedback from the other townships that are using the system. 6 of the 8 townships in Peterborough County are using the system. So I think it's a number that fits in to our budget and doesn't create bad things for us. Something to look at.
Very good. And the municipal concept drawing is the other addition here, and capital expenses proposed for 2022. This is specific to municipal concept drawing. Bob, do you want to speak to that?
So these are concept drawings for the new buildings, municipal office, public works, depot up at the Midtown property.
Okay.
No, not the arena.
Okay.
The arena is a separate item.
We'll continue to canvass for grants that are available, both provincial, federal, conditional, and unconditional, to help support these capital expenses. Definitely to keep our eye on the ball. Don't want to, well, March 1st is going to have some interesting things coming in this regard. So stay tuned for that.
So a couple items through you, Mayor Martin, if I may, to point out here. Community awards. Typically, we don't do that in the final year of a term, so we may, that number potentially could shift. The tree program, we didn't allocate anything there. We might want to do that.
Is this the year we do that every other year? Or would this not be the year for that?
For the tree program?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yes, so I'm suggesting we may want to allocate a number there. Food bank rental, we need to put something in there.
Okay.
What is the food bank rental? Do you know?
There's a monthly charge. Somebody help me here. $600. I think it's in the neighborhood of 600. I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Video council meetings, expenditures there would be our subscription, if that isn't covered elsewhere, our software subscription to Zoom.
There is the photocopier line that you'll see as well. That's the proposed replacement of the one copier with 2 Xerox machines. That gets us still less than the current machine that is not overly reliable. Part of the challenge we have is our buildings department will print these larger colored files that will back up the printer and periodically have it crash, which is a service call from the third party in Peterborough. So you'll see that line there for $9,000, as well as the telephone system. Both may be able to go underneath the COVID grant if we talk about the photocopier that can allow people remotely to scan to more efficiently communicate. Certainly we'll do what we can to use up those funds.
The economic development side, I might refer to Councillor Webb on that one. I'm not sure where we sit with that. There was talk of a new sign, a new HBM sign.
Oh, yeah. That's on hold, I believe. The committee didn't like the sign idea. They wanted to go with the rebranding. So that's kind of where the committee is now. So, yeah, I don't know. That's where we are. I'll leave it up to the rest of council, whether they want to put some money in there. What I was originally looking at last year when we brought it to the committee was something around maybe $15,000 to $30,000, which would kind of be a redo of the big signs coming into HBM. So I guess along 50, 30, and coming from up north, just to kind of get a uniform sign, because everywhere you go, there's a different looking sign with different numbers on it and population numbers. That went to the committee. I guess they kind of liked the idea, but thought that we should rebrand the whole town. So that's where it's kind of been stuck in the committee since that point. We got some on the committee that would rather, stay on the small side and pick away at it with small projects like signage and whatnot. And the other half of the committee wants to go big and rebrand the whole town. So that's kind of where we are. It hasn't been decided yet, but just letting the rest of council know.
So the other sign there should be a line item or a budget, and they must be due soon since we did the signs. They should have been part of the thing where we, in 10 years, we should have enough in there to replace some type of thing. Is that not it, Hart?
Yeah, I don't think we did, Jim. I think what's happened is that's what we've run into over the past, say, 2 years. Before that, we got into it where we were going to do signs, and I think Tracy from Peakhead came with the red funding. So we held off on it, holding our breath for this red funding that was going to come from the province that we never end up getting. But I think it's one of these things I don't think it's ever been budgeted for. We've been looking for grants and these other things, but I don't know I can't remember any money being put into the budget for this over the last 3 or 4 years.
No, it was something that when we did the signs, once we take a new project on that, there's a life cycle for them, and we usually have a budget put away every year. So if it's $100,000 and they're going to last 10 years, there should be a reserve somewhere for signs.
Possibly, but I mean, some of the signs I'm talking about, at least the ones on 50 and coming in, those signs looks like they've been there for 30 years. So I mean,
no, they're wait, I don't know if you're talking about the entry signs, you mean?
Yeah.
No, they're just probably, I'm not sure. They were from the trip, like Township revitalization. So
okay.
Yeah,
and
so I'll have to look at that.
Maybe there is. That was before my time. I didn't know if you had that replenished fund for the sign. I don't remember seeing any line item in terms of money being put in there for signs.
All right, we'll have to look at that.
I think if we're gonna rebrand Hart, I think that would be a decision of a new council.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Dave. That's why this was all started last summer. That's kind of why we wanted to go small, because we didn't want to put council in that position where we're making a big decision in the last year of the term. But you get in these councils and things don't always go your way sometimes. Or committees, I should say.
I got one for you too.
Yep.
We have a jewel in this municipality. It's been a rail town for 100 and some years. And it's something that most other municipalities don't have is a railway into their small municipality, and they have you know, a couple of mines. And that's all, you know. I don't like this rebranding because we have something here that, like I say, it's a jewel. And people stop to take pictures of our caboose, they take pictures of the old railway station, of the yards. In fact, the old Havelock pin that I think I gave you one.
Mhm.
It had the, you know, the train, the man with the pickaxe, the lakes that were on it. And the train, you know, I think
Oh,
rebranding is a lot of money for what?
I completely agree, Councillor Pomeroy. I wish maybe you could come out to one of our committee meetings sometime and express your opinions.
I can do that.
You're more than welcome. Just so you know, that was the plan. The plan, as I referenced, the kind of, as Jim called them, gateway signs coming into HBM. But also part of that plan was kind of, I guess, across from where Home Hardware would be, just up from the chamber kiosk would be have kind of a 2 or 3 sign kind of layout there with, as you said, we could have the history of Havelock, the history of Belmont-Methuen, the history of mining in Havelock, and the history of the railroad in Havelock. It'd be kind of a 4 sign thing that people, when they come along the highway, they could stop there, have their lunch at the picnic table, and there'd be a bit of information there. So that was, well, it wasn't just my idea, that was the idea of some on the committee. But as I said, others on the committee wanted to take it to the next level. So, but I agree with you in that everything we need to present is right here in the town. I don't think we need to create anything new. There's plenty of history between the mines, the railroad, cottage country. But I think too, we do have to realize that there are new people moving into our area with different ideas. So that's what happens sometimes is these the 2 ideas come to a head and somebody's got to make a decision. So that's kind of where we are now.
So for today, we have the economic development sign. We can just leave it where it is. It has 0 beside it. I think it's too early in the process. And I think like Deputy Mayor Giroux said, that's something for the next council to decide. So I think we could just leave it where it is right now, David.
Yeah, that's if that's the wish of council, then I have no problem with that.
So the consensus on the capital expenditures, are we any further to approving, or do we want, not approving, but getting, I mean, what is the vote, not the vote, but what is the consensus of the proposals?
Maybe you could take some of the money from the community awards and put it into the tree program. What is that, Barry, that we normally put in there, 2,000 or 3,000 or something? Anybody got a number there?
Are we gonna approve?
Oh, no, approve is the wrong word. But
Not today, but it's a suggestion.
Not today.
Yeah.
Just
Jim, I
Go
think
ahead.
it's 2,000 to 3,000. Sorry,
Okay.
Martin.
Okay, there should be a number in there, I think, if this is the year that we normally do it. But Hart, you had a question?
well, no, I was just gonna, like, when we're doing this, are we gonna get into like picking this apart right now? Because I thought this is
No.
like a general, what, we're starting to do that though. You know what I mean? And if
Yeah,
we're gonna do that, fine, let's do it. But I haven't even had a look. None of us had a look at any of this, so I don't know why we'd be trying to dive into it right now.
that's right. It's just, you can keep that in mind. That's missing something for the tree program. But yeah, you're right. Let's just go through this thing and keep your notes. When you get into your binder, go in and speak to staff for the departments that you have questions about, and let's see what we can do to narrow it down. So I just think some of the things he's touching on here, doesn't hurt to touch on them, but we don't want to get into the weeds here on it. So, okay.
thanks, Harold. I'll make a point of staying on point here and getting through the information. We're now on almost 2 hours. So we've got another hour left, depending on whether people want to go over or not.
Does everybody want to take a 5-minute break here? And then we could come back to it. Is that all right with everyone? Just take 5 minutes here and then we'll.
Yep.
All right, then it's 10 to 3 here. So let's come back at 5-3, and let's get this finished.
All right.
Okay, we're almost wrapped up administration. I'll try and stay on point. We've got an hour left. If we can finish up everything up to the roads department, we'll be in good shape to beat the schedule. Unless there's any other questions on the capital expenditures for administration, we'll jump into the year-over-year difference, 21 versus 2022 budget.
What tab are we on?
We're on the final bottom one. We are on administration. which is
Still tab 5, Gary, just the last page.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. I thought we were on the last.
So, I mean, one amendment there, the difference there that it's got the year-over-year change skewed was in the transfer to reserve, which I corrected, just kept it balanced year over year. So now we're at essentially a break even for the administration department. If everyone can see my screen, we're at 0.16 year over year change. So I've noted the things you want me to look into to get the administration to a point where you can seriously consider what's been put forth. So unless there's any other questions, we'll move on.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, we'll move on.
Now into the council budget. Fairly straightforward.
Tab 7.
Yes. So really a break even again, that does factor in the funds allocated to the election expenses, which is in the bottom tab, but I'll go top down just so we can get a sense. I like the fact that it's balanced. Salary's been adjusted, but very minimally. We look at the benefits is also very flat. Same with conventions, though the conventions got cut by a substantial amount. It's assumed that it will return this year. Telephone and internet.
Just sorry, Larry had something there.
Just quickly, where's the one I seen? Oh, mileage, because of COVID and because of our virtual meetings. The line item for mileage.
Yes.
The actual.
Yeah, the actual, I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah.
The actual, I had a double look at that or a double take to, I mean, really, did you really hit their mileage bang on? 4,000 budgeted, 4,000 actual? I'll double check that. I do recall rubbing my eyes, hey, is that really true? It's the first time we used mileage expense account. But yeah, it's I'll see.
Yeah, I usually sign those, and I can't see us touching anything near there because I haven't really had any mileage. That might be something worth looking at.
Yes.
I don't think anybody has, but I would think.
So going forward, yeah, okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. Depending on what that number is, we can also look at what 4120 for this year's budget, if that's reasonable or not. Bottom line is the total year over year across this expense allocation is consistent, so not overly concerned there. Telephone, internet, again, flat year over year. Miscellaneous expenses, well, there's some variability there. Does anyone have any comment on miscellaneous? We're factoring in Christmas recognition awards, food bank, and meals and pins. All worthy causes.
Yeah, Larry, you had something there?
Yeah, that line item we're just speaking to seems to me a bit excessive.
Okay, which one?
The one where we, I gotta try to see on my screen here.
Oh, let me blow it up here. So.
Oh, sorry. No, that didn't help.
That's kind of like the council, like, like a fund, kind of like the council one
Well,
that Barry.
Yeah, there's a group of them, recognition awards, Christmas flowers, food, bag rental, 17,330. Last year, of course, nothing, but, is that number, now that I can see it, it's not as bad, not as bad as what the first look I had. And the same thing with, where was I? Let me back up here, Ben. The technology stipend. Which, like, I'm looking at some of this stuff
Mhm.
where it wasn't used,
Yes,
and it must go back to a reserve, right?
yes, it will. It's a cash sweep at year's end that gets reappointed into the reserves.
Okay, and I think Councillor Webb was speaking to this same topic early in the meeting
Mhm.
Regarding the reserve. It'd be nice to have a copy of what the reserves are and the amounts in them.
You bet. I'll quickly snap over to this reserve tab here that I think will give you a sense that we're on the ball, and we'll articulate this further as we move along in the budget process. But this is what I have currently shared on the screen here, if you can see it. I think that's what you're.
Dave, will that be in the binders?
Yes, it should be in the binders. Let me see here. Tab 4. Reserve summary is on tab 4. Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Okay, good, thanks. Yep.
Yes. So no, it's critical. I would like to tighten up our reserve policy going forward on maximum minimums and replenishments. Bob and I have been in discussions of that. But next step here as we move along the budget, now that we know what the needs and wants are, will be to layer in our reserve funds, not depleting them. Obviously they need to be replenished, but to avoid, keep the taxes as low as we can.
And that's something that I think Hart's been on about for the past couple of years. And I think we really need to, that's a communication thing, because, you know, what's dedicated to certain things and what's, you know, if there is any overflow there, that's something we need to know, because there's a false thought out there that we have a ton of reserves, which we do, but most of them are dedicated. But we need to really be on top of that and make sure that we're not, you know, overfilling them or underfilling them. Like there is some that are going to get hit here with the COVID pricing, like I said, with regards to vehicle replacement, things like that. We may be light, but there's others that could be heavy. So that'll be a good thing to work on here going forward.
Yes. So the other allocation there is the mentioned election GL account that's set up for this year. Factoring all this in, we have essentially a break even year over year. 21 budget versus 2022.
Good work, Bob.
Thank you. That's 2 in a row. It's 2 department budgets in a row. Okay, my work here is done.
Art, did you have a question?
Yeah, it was just kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, Jim, about the reserve policy. I got into this with the last treasurer about there's money, I think you kind of allude to it, there's money in there that for future projects that maybe we or the public, you know, are unaware of. But moving forward with the policy, I'd like to see something put in there that kind of separates that out so we can see it as well, right? Because I think once again, these reserves are just these kind of general funds that, you know, money's going in and coming out of, and maybe the department heads know what this is for, but I'll tell you in a lot of instances, me as a counselor, I don't know what they're for, and I guarantee you the public doesn't know what they're for. And when we're dealing with numbers like we're dealing, like the number I saw there was 14 million in reserves. The last time we had Richard Saganga here and I asked him on what a good reserve would be, he said 1 year operating expense, which to me is around $7 million. So to me, you know, and I understand of that extra 7 million, there might be future projects in there, but I'd like to see that laid out. So I know exactly how much extra money we got laying around, because there is extra money laying around there.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something like, yeah, once we get through this, we are gonna have to, you know, understand it better. Because the one that was always, as, you know, over the years, the one that keeps getting thrown at me, and it's because it's one of the bigger ones, is the sewage treatment plant. It's nearing 10 years now, and it's a huge, we put a huge amount of money into that every year, I think. So it's nearing the end of whatever it's, some of the replacement things that need replaced. So it might look like a huge reserve, but that's the thing we need to understand. What's it going towards? You know, next.
No, and I understand, but the one I looks at me that I looked, it jumps out is we got a $6 million reserve in the bin.
Yeah.
You know, we could run the whole township off that reserve for a year. And it shouldn't, there's no way it should be that high. Now, if there's money in there that's been allocated for the new town office or whatnot, then fine. But I haven't been told that, or I don't know that for sure, or how much that is. And I think moving forward, these are the things that need to be laid out, not just the amount of money in the reserve, but if there is money in there, what it's allocated for, what year it'll be spent, because we can't continue to overtax these people, especially with the climate we're in today. Everybody needs every dollar they can, you know, keep in their pocket. So we can't continually go to the public and from department to department, ask for 10 to 15% more than we really need to operate the town. And that's what we've been doing.
Okay. Yeah, so that's going to be a work in progress there to do a better job at communicating that. So okay.
Definitely noted. If it's okay, we've got 50 minutes to move through the building department and Ryan's park and rec department. I definitely have to save 30 minutes for Ryan's park and rec, because we're revisiting strategic plans and asset management, which Ryan's put together well. So, John, if you're here, we're now presenting your department.
Okay.
Scrolling down, there is an increase here, but we have a truck that's been earmarked in capital expenses, but I'll go top down the way we have to give you a sense of how this is coming together. John, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Thanks, John. John, don't tell me this is the last time you're going to be doing this.
It is.
Okay. So moving through here, it was fairly easy to put together. John's department has been consistent year over year. When we look at the revenues, it's relatively flat, predictable across all the permitting. Transfer from reserves is minimal. There was the plotter printer that was purchased last year, but other than that, HPM Buildings essentially runs like clockwork. Scrolling down into the building expenses, reasonably flat year over year. 243,000 to be 3,000 under budget. Well budgeted, well earned out for the year. 2022 budget has been given a bit of an uptick there, but only due to the wage adjustments that we've discussed previously. John, I don't know if you're going to have a summer student there. I left it open.
Yeah, nothing planned at this time.
Okay. Please interject at any point, John, if I misstep.
Okay.
Benefits, I left flat. Likely should apply the 3% uptick to this, but it's not going to move the needle much. What is moving the needle for this part of the budget is the truck. Conventions, same theme, didn't go and put the budget up to normal levels in previous years. Membership dollars were spent accordingly. Moving on to the second page and the last page. Communications have to determine why Keystone isn't picking this up correctly. Across cell phones, it's falling in likely into another part of the budget. Obviously, we've paid for communications, but 1680 year over year. I'll make sure on the next visit that 5347 has the actuals in there so you can make an informed decision. The one thing legal building, John, do you want to comment on legal activities, or are we getting into the weeds?
The legal costs are heritage or historical outstanding occurrences that we're now trying to resolve. And there's going to be a few of those ongoing for a while. It's pretty hard to budget what the actual legal costs are going to be year over year.
Right. And in that, where I'm going with that is I would like to put a bit more of a buffer there for 5361. But open to council's consensus, of course.
Anybody
We can
got any-
revisit that when everything's tied together too, and we're looking to make final tweaks. So insurance relatively flat. Everything else, it was streamlined. It was easy budget to write up. Actuals year over year for legal, we were up by $5,000. Worth noting. I'll make a note to revisit that when we're putting together the finals.
Yeah, the gas and oil is gonna need a little bump.
So with the truck, having said that, we're at a 15% year over year increase. Now it's important to take a step back as relative. The building department is smaller in terms of dollars. It's 213,522 or 213,000 versus 260. But if we take off the truck, we're now getting to minus 2.74. And another way to look at the truck too, also that's assuming we buy the truck outright. If we lease it and have payments of $330 a month, that's quite attractive and is easier to justify. So all in all, with or without the truck, I think the building department's in reasonable shape.
So David, if I could interject just for 1 second, the building department in reserve, our summary, we're at $408,889.82. So our asset allocation or asset management is for truck replacement every 10 years. This truck is a 2011, so by the end of this year, the 2023s will be out. So that vehicle will actually be 12 model years old. So with putting the $4,206 per year into our reserves, we have it calculated out that putting that in every year will keep the two trucks maintained and replaced. So if that truck comes out of the $400,000 reserve, that would have us at a negative budget for this year. I would also like to look at 2270-5811, which is the equipment repairs and maintenance. Last year, we were almost $5,000 in repairs because this vehicle is getting close to the 12 years old. So by replacing this truck, hopefully in the next 5 or 6 years, the repairs would drop back to our budgeted amount.
Right.
No, that's great. If there are any other questions,
Yeah, Art had a
we've got- please. Yeah.
Art, go ahead.
Just clarification, did you say, John, we'd already budgeted the 4,600 for that truck?
So every year we put approximately $4,000 in reserve to pay for that truck. So we have $409,000 in reserve, in the building reserve, to replace that truck. So by taking that 40,000 plus whatever we get for the old one out of reserves, then it wouldn't change the budget. We would get a new truck, and then gradually we would put every year money in the reserve so that in 5 years, when the other truck came time to replace it, we would already have the money in the reserve for the building for those vehicles.
That's exactly what we want. Can you draw that? Can you draw that up and hand it out to the rest of the departments?
That's the way it's supposed to work, but we keep monkeying with the replacement schedule. So there you go. There's a good example.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
So if I could just interject into that, two things. Firstly, through you, Mayor Martin, with respect to Councillor Webb's comments earlier, further to the comments of the chief building official, this is the kind of report I believe that Councillor Webb is requesting and that council would like to see. What happens with our reserves? Why are they there? And how much money is going in? So the treasurer is commencing that project. Once we get through this budget exercise, that'll be the next item. But we need to clarify that for council and the community so everyone understands why the money's going in and how much is going in on an annual basis. Further to the truck discussion, the other potential savings here, the treasurer is working on the lease option in partnership with the County of Peterborough and possibly the Township of North Kawartha. If the volume of vehicles is sufficient, the lease option could be very financially attractive to us. But that remains to be seen. We're still investigating.
Can't come quick enough.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll carry on.
I've been chomping at the bit to get that truck report to you. It is in final draft. It's ready to go. It's really pending the county's decision. The company that supports this program is through the LAS program, and it's Enterprise, who I'm sure everyone's familiar with. I really hope, my fingers are crossed, because I think it's a fairly convincing program, but we'll let that materialize as it comes in the coming weeks. So we now have 40 minutes to get through Ryan's department, which I think will speak to why we have reserve levels the way we do. Ryan is here in person. Ryan, thanks for taking the time to present in person. With Ryan's department, I would like to go through what.
Sorry, David, can I interrupt for one moment?
Yes,
I don't
please.
think we touched on planning.
Oh, geez, okay.
The chief building official is still with us. Tab 15 is the planning department, so building and planning. If we could briefly touch on that, and then we'll get to Parks and Recreation.
You bet. I'm sorry to miss up. The planning department was as easy as the budget department to pull together. Consistent year over year, the increase is 1.49%, I recall, which factors in the wage adjustments and minimal amounts for benefits. I'll let everyone get on tab 15 here. So top down revenues consistent year over year. I let the revenues go back up to where they were in 21. Scrolling down, it's really self-explanatory, but I'll let people digest it as I stop talking for a minute. I did see that consulting did go above and beyond by $19,000. I'd like to drill down and explain why that happened, just to make sure it's not going to be happening again this year. Make note of that. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Any questions, council? No, that's good, David.
Great. Okay. Getting down, there was a definite gap on the economic development piece. Budgeted for 35,000, only spent 1,400, and let the levels rise back up to 36,000. That'd be the one thing that I think could certainly be looked at closer if we need to go back up that high. And so this is the final result on the increase to 1.49% year over year.
That wayward signs is what Art was talking about. Go ahead, Art.
Yeah, and now that, well, I don't know which way we're gonna go, I guess, for the new position, but maybe we should have these separated back out again. Now that, like, why do we have planning and ec dev together? Like, I guess it was because Laura was here, obviously, but
Yeah,
they don't really go together, so.
You said you want them separated the way they are, or?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know if we're gonna bring in another planner / ec dev person, in which case you might want to keep it, but I would think that we're not. And I think that they're two completely different things, right?
Mhm.
But I understand why they're together, David. And to Jim, the wayward signage, yeah, I think that was put in there for some kind of contingency on what we were doing there, Jim.
I think that was for the sign for PCAD, so.
Yep.
So, and we did it, so it's there. So anyways, okay, Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, and just a quick comment. I think until we decide exactly what this new economic development position may entail, it may be wise to leave it is as it is until at that point, because it may tie into planning. You never know.
Yeah, for now we can leave it, but it's just, yeah, maybe something to look at in the future, keep an eye on, right? So, okay.
Sounds good. So we've got 35 minutes to get through Parks and Rec. We'll start with the facilities Capex, which then will dictate and flow into the tabs that you're familiar with. So we're looking at that the colorful landscape document that's in your binders.
Oh, I can't see any of this shit.
Yeah, it's a bit intense there. What the facilities Capex document represents is all the strategic asset mentions in the previous plans that we have. Ryan's gone through and has put them, their age, their category, the plan that they were on, and the dollar values that were associated. I'll let Ryan speak to the needs and wants and where he thinks the focus should be, and we can have group discussion as we go.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so in front of you, there's a list here that includes all of the facility condition assessment evaluations that were done 2018. Just wanted to kind of point you to the direction of to the column where it says FCA plan. That was the year that it was recommended that item was to be replaced, and it's been in the budget since that year there. So this year I just kind of added just the age of the element and a little bit of general comments about the specific item itself. I know in previous years through this council, we discussed prioritizing these items, and knowing that we realistically can't complete all of these projects in 1 year. But the importance of keeping this on the list so it doesn't fall off and get lost is also something that we want to keep council informed of. So there's a couple of carry forwards at the top with the Patterson Park or the property on corner of Oak and George. There's some plans for the future parks development at the community center, 39 George Street. And then there's an important requirement there for our successful grant through the ICIP arena improvements. $203,115. That was pre-approved at the May 2021 council meeting. So that's important. That's our portion of the grant for this year for the schedule. But so coming down to priorities, like this year seems to be the theme of air conditioners. If you look at the Havelock libraries, the age element's 19 years old. It was due to be replaced last year. This year for sure, it's something that we want to. Council wants to make sure it's a priority that we look at replacing that. Same thing with the Cordova Library Community Hall. It was scheduled to be replaced in 2020. This unit is 25 years old. So in these types of situations, it's a lot less expensive for the township to schedule these replacements as opposed to dealing with them in an emergency situation. So keeping the theme with the air conditioners under the municipal office, set out in the facility condition assessment plan, it's listed out in 2020 that this was to be replaced. The age of the element is 25 years old. So those are some of the main priorities for some of the municipal facilities. Now, on top of that, it's also important that we deal with the former town hall roof replacement and the accessible ramp. So if that's the flavor of council, if they want to choose to do that, it's been listed in the plan for a few years now, and it's back on here to be dealt with again at this round of deliberations. So getting down further into the parks equipment and development at the bottom part of the document, staff allowed some budget for 25,000 to do a parking lot pending the sale of the medical center. The commercial zero turn, our primary mower that we use for maintaining parks, was to be replaced in the old schedule in 2019. We've been hanging on to that piece of equipment, so it's back on here for replacement again this year. Set out in the Parks and Recreation 10-year master plan, it was highly noted that a splash pad to be constructed in the village of Havelock. So we had done tendering for that last year, and the 333,000 represents what the submission was for that. That was a successful submission, which council approved in principle at that time. So that's on here. Both of our half-ton trucks, one's 18 years old and one's 11 years old. We kind of already had discussed what those operating costs look like and versus purchasing new. So those are on here for discussion. And the banners for the March to September are in need of replacement, so that they're on here. And then just to increase some floral displays in the town, which we've been doing every year. So we wanted to kind of continue that commitment to improve that floral display in town. So that kind of highlights kind of the needs. I didn't get into any of the wants at this point. I know council just received this document, so I'll let them have some time to review that. But those are some of the pressure points for Parks and Recreation Facilities Department.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Ryan? You had a half an hour, Ryan. You didn't use it all. Go ahead, Art.
Yeah, just a question on the parking for Concession Street Park. Did we decide to go ahead with that?
So through Mayor Martin to Councilor Webb's comment, that is just on here pending the sale of the medical center. So in the event that the medical center is sold, this money, I'm just putting it there just to make sure that there's something there so that in the event that council wants to install a parking lot on that concession street parkland, that there's some money set aside to do that, to construct that parking lot. But this is all is going to tie together with the condition of the sale.
Okay. Well, just a question, well, I don't know, like a question, like, the park on George Street is listed under the, I guess, under a grant.
We already budgeted for it last year, though.
So there is money to do it if we don't get the
Yeah.
grant? Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Splash pad?
That's kind of what I meant last week when I was talking about if we're gonna wait for the grants, be prepared, because they may be a couple of years out, where if we've already budgeted for that one anyways. We should be getting on with it, but that's a council decision, and that's what we'll talk about over the next couple of weeks with this budget.
Is the splash pad or?
No, the park on Oak and George, we
Okay,
budgeted for it last year.
Yep.
So it's already in the budget, and he's got the drawings and ready to go, and that's where we need to get out on that. So
in terms of proceeding on that, what do we have to wait till the grant comes in, or what, how does that?
that's what I think staff is gonna look at. We talked about last week about some grants, you can start, but you can't pay for them, and if you've already budgeted for it, you can't get a grant. So we're just clarifying on some of these, if you can, we've already budgeted for that one, and we may wait 2 years and get told no when we could have had it done. So that's what we have to decide about as a council.
Is making that decision then? So okay, well, I was just under the understanding that that we're getting an answer for these grants like around the start of March.
It depends on the election, Art. It's I could see them coming at the end of April, maybe some of them if they're provincial because the election, but if they're federal grants like the one for George Street, we may not hear about that for who knows when. But yeah, we need to get moving on it. So okay. And Larry, you had something?
Well, just a quick comment, rather than prolong that discussion. At our last council meeting, we talked about this same item, and our CAO was going to do some investigating regarding starting a project before you got your grant. Right?
Yeah. So we haven't got that information yet, but that's what we'll find out before we,
Well, just to that, I'm no expert, but I'd be willing to bet quite a bit of money that you're not allowed to.
yeah. Most of them are that way, but
And
some,
But that's what I'm saying is we should be assuming that instead of saying, oh, well, maybe they'll let us, because I've had discussions with somebody in the financial field in the last week that said that there's no way in hell they're ever going to let you put a shovel in the ground until you know whether or not you get the grant. So I don't know why we'd be sitting here wasting a couple of weeks going, well, geez, we got to make a decision here or else none of this is getting done. We're
So that's
5 days from the start of March. A lot of these things should have been in the queue already, signed off, ready to go here. So I'm really worried that we think we're going to make a decision next week and somehow in a month, we're going to have 3 or 4 contractors in here doing all these things. It's not going to happen that way, not during COVID.
so that's what you got to bring at the next meeting, Hart, is you're
But I
right.
said it the last meeting. I've said this for 2 or 3 meetings,
I know, but so this meeting here is the highlight. So at your next meeting there, if you want to bring forward that we go ahead with the project or we don't go ahead with the project, bring it to the meeting and move it and get a seconder and we'll move on with it. Today, like you said, we're not going to get in the weeds here, but George Street is the same thing. And any of our roads projects at the county, we pre-approve them, especially when we're so late into the process here. We try and get moving on them because you won't be able to get them done if you wait too long. So, but it's all up to council. And if you want to, like I'll use the park as an example. If the money's budgeted for and you don't want to wait for the to hear if we got the grant or not, we can move ahead with it. We got the money in there and it was budgeted for. So that's a little different one. But when we get to George Street, that's going to be a huge hit that we're going to have to, have some good conversation because we need to get that street fixed. And we waited for the last application and didn't get approved in 2018. We waited about a year. We've got another one in there right now. but that's what I talked about a couple of meetings ago about Plan B. We need to get that George Street done. And if we wait 2 years to hear back on that grant, because we've been approved by the province, but we haven't been approved by the federal, and it's a federal grant. So we could wait and then not get it. So if we want to move ahead with these projects, that's what we're here for, is to make a decision there on how important that grant is compared to just moving ahead and getting these projects done before we have a problem. So.
Okay, thank you,
Next
Jim.
meeting, bring it forward and whatever you want to do there and see what council thinks as a whole. So Larry, did you have something there?
No, just waiting to get back to budget.
Okay. So, all right then, so there's a ding.
We'll step through the same way we did the other departments, and Ryan, please interject as we go. If we go bottom up, taking care of the day-to-day operations, there's a limited increase of 5.8% right now. However, this also assumes that there's less 120,000 in revenue. So if we get that up to the budgeted level in 2021, we'll be far in the negative. Now that's because we're not entertaining Capex yet, or the capital expenditures that we're going to earmark for Parks and Rec and facilities. But we're going to prioritize that, as the laundry list is quite long, needs and wants, the Capex that Ryan was stepping through. So I'll go top down quickly here. We've got 20 minutes before wrapping up. Year over year revenue base, reasonably consistent, although there was a big slip in 21 actuals. And I left it somewhat depressed in the 2022 budget. However, we do certainly have the ability to pull from the reserves, depending on what we want to do with the Capex. So that's the approach right now. Ryan and I discussed the surface rentals were low, 30,000 budgeted, 13,000 earned. I'm sure once COVID leaves or dissipates, those levels will come back up again. Ryan, anything else in revenues that's worth mentioning?
No, just that, like we've operated through shutdowns and lockdowns, where, that obviously affects the amount of revenue that we're bringing in. So hopefully, as David mentioned, that as we move forward and out of the step progression, those levels will return to normalcy. So.
Okay, we'll get into the expense part. I'm now in the 7700 part, full-time, part-time wages. Same methodology as the other departments with the limited inflation increases across full-time, part-time, and benefits. Get in some mileage, $1,500 was allocated, $13 was expensed. I don't know what that person did with their $13, but it should come in that. Education, 8,200 budgeted, only 1,200 essentially was spent. Memberships, healthy year over year. There was a bit of an overspend on materials and supplies, likely due to COVID. Cleaning, gloves, all that sort of stuff. Advertising was relatively, well, no, it's actually down year over year, but it's limited only to $500 in the budget. So allowed for an uptick in communications. Doesn't need to be that way. I'm sure Hart is falling off his chair at this point with that theme. Consulting $0, but we did put a buffer in there going forward. Insurance, usual uptick. Please stop me if anyone has any questions. So in summary, the Park and Rec's overhead operation expenses shouldn't have any real surprises to the counselors in our audience. We're now on page 2 of 3 into the operating expenses general. Like the fact that it's reasonably flat, budget versus actuals versus budgeted. you'll see there is a TBD in the 2022 budget. Definitely to get our hands wrapped around that is if you look at the total Capex wish list, it's substantial. Ryan and I will put our heads together and try and drill down on that. Any questions? And 7710 expenses?
No, I just wonder if, like, moving forward with the grant that we've got for there, there's gonna have to be a design put forward for the building. And I know it's later in the, I think it's the 5th year or 4th year that the addition will be happening, but should we be getting a design in place so we, have a vision of what it's gonna look like over there? Or should there be any money even if we start putting money in, even if it's not the whole thing, but if we were to put some in there to prepare for, there's gonna be some expenses out of that, is there not, Ryan?
Yeah, so if you look, it was actually approved last year for us to start doing that. There was 75,000. It's a carry forward. It's listed on the Capex document.
Okay.
Second line, $75,000. So we've already put thought into that, and we wish to proceed with exploring those options and getting design done this year.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none.
Now into arena expenses. Consistent with the conversation so far, it is a down year budget versus actuals in 21. I'm sure people are tired of hearing COVID, but it is what it is. And Capex is TBD, but although the schedule for the rink and for the community center upgrade is well understood. March 1st, we're hoping to get ahead of all this and very much looking forward to someone who can help us with drawings and with a vision and a plan that could likely compress that 5-year build for the community center. That would be a win for everyone. So moving down to the Lions Club, which is a new GL account that was recently set up. Hence the budget numbers starting in 2022 only. Fairly self-explanatory unless there's any questions.
No.
Okay.
Seeing none.
Any takers?
No, I don't see it.
I just wanted to kind of jump back to the arena expenses and just
Yes.
kind of highlight the hydro. So you're probably wondering why there's, we had budgeted 50,000 last year, and then this year we only spent 23,000. Well, that has to do with a later start date, and we also, our rental surface rentals were down, so therefore our flooding patterns were a lot less. We're able to raise the temperature on the refrigeration package to run more efficiently. So we kept it. We're assuming that this year we're going to start normally, regular start time, and not see these shutdowns. So that's why we would wanted to kind of resume the same hydro expenses as in previous years. I just wanted to bring that up. That was one major thing there that contributed to the why we didn't spend as much this year, I guess.
Okay.
Hey, David, on Lions Club,
Yes, please.
from 2020, 2021, 2021, actual is 0 all the way through. We get to 22, we have all those numbers. So the 13, 9, 12, 15, is that their budget or our budget?
Rank.
Okay, so through you, Mayor Martin, Deputy Mayor Giroux's comment. This is a new line item based on some discussions that we've had, and we're trying to work through an agreement with the Lions Club. These expenses were provided by the Lions Club to the township. So assuming that we're going to move forward with some sort of agreement this year, we included those expenses in the budget based on what conversations we've previously had between the Lions Clubs and council. And I don't know if Bobby, you want to kind of clarify anything on that?
Yes, just to expand upon that, thank you, Ryan, through you, Mayor Martin. This is put in there as a hypothetical, as a possibility. There was a discussion as the manager of Parks and Recreation indicated with the Lions Club. That discussion has not yet concluded. However, part of that discussion was the township assuming expenditures. So in order to allow for proper budgeting, we felt it best to include those expenditures in the budget. It's easier to remove them than put them back in later. So we included them at this stage.
Fair enough.
Okay,
So the last category we have before the summary is the sports field expenses. Self-explanatory, down, given kids weren't playing in league play, I'm sure. But modeled in that it's going to return this spring, this summer. And now we're into the summary of year-over-year changes, budget versus actual. I feel we've been conservative in our approach. If you look at the numbers going left to right in the final summary chart, as I mentioned, revenue, we modeled out $120,000, although it was certainly available in reserves if it's seen fit by our counselors. Overhead expenses were up $20,000. Same with parks expenses, operating expenses up. These are all budgetary numbers. So there's certainly room to cut out some fat, if you will. I think we're in reasonable shape. However, the Capex, Parks and Rec, it certainly needs to be focused and prioritized as seen fit. So that would summarize where we are today. The elephant in the room, the biggest piece of our budget, over 50%, is our roads and waste, Peter's department, of course. So we would like to carve out time for that. We're 10 minutes ahead of time, but roads likely is an entire hour. And if we look at the HBM citizens that gave their priority list, roads had 35% in terms of priorities, which is the reason why Barry has been reinforcing this for some time. So certainly look forward to presenting that at the start of next meeting. In your mailbox, we'll have the road department budget. It is ready on my screen. And I'll make sure that everyone has that in their binders before we commence the next meeting. Any other questions, suggestions, tips that you'd like to see different, more or less attention on?
Comment? I'd like to thank David for this binder and who all worked on it. I think for me, it was one of the most easy ones to read and go through. It's very self-explanatory. Kudos, because for the last few years, it's been very difficult. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the council, but for me, I got more out of this meeting today than I did in 6 hours ago, the last budget. So, Dave, thank you.
Thank you. It's very kind. I started it from scratch. I didn't simply print out Keystone and put it in a binder, which I saw in previous years. It took a lot of time to start a clean sheet in Excel. The news is the heavy lifting's done, and it's now a matter of tying everything together. The fun part for me starts when we can actually correlate and sensitize and look at doing things one way versus another, and we can really model it in a live feed where you can dictate what you want to do, and it can drill down to the actual tax rates. So I know people are very anxious to know what the tax rates are, but we're getting there in a logical, sequential manner. But that's the fun part for me.
okay. So that's pretty well a wrap for today. Is and looking at the schedule, I'm going to ask council to take a look at the schedule. Maybe speak with David and Bob, and it's a good schedule, but there might be a possibility. The one I'm worried about is Public Works right now. The longer we leave it, and it's something that needs to be dealt with as far as getting any contracts out there. So it's for capital. So anyways, that's something to think about. If there's a possibility of moving it up a little bit to try and get it dealt with, that would be my suggestion. But see what happens here in the near future, but go through your binder. And thank you, David, for doing this. It's and staff. There's been a lot of consultation going on here. And yeah, looking forward to going to the next step and working with staff to come up with, you know, some ideas maybe to cut it down some here. So, and I think your term of wants and needs, that'll be the discussion with staff, is what do we need and what's just something you would like. So, so let's see what we can do. The next meeting, it says financial indicators you're going to present on March 1st. So if there's any time in there that we could squeeze in anything else, that's might be something to think about in that week. But that's just my thought.
I could suggest, Mayor Martin, through you, I don't know whether it work or not, but perhaps we could ask staff or Ryan's department or Peter's department and send out a doodle poll and see if we get that meet a little early. Will that work, or is that a bad idea?
Okay.
It wouldn't be a long one if we're just gonna do roads.
Yeah, it's sometimes one to focus on.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Martin. So Public Works Department would be an hour, hour and a half at the most, I would think. So if we could carve out an hour to do that in the next week before our next council meeting, perhaps we can just move that along.
Yeah, I'm full up, but this week anyways, it's it seems like I might have one morning open. So other than that, I'm full right through. I have one tonight at 7 actually. So okay, we'll see what we can do. We'll talk it over. If even if it's right after the maybe, you know, the March 1st week there, maybe we can do something there. Okay, and get that out of the way, at least get the presentation so we can move on with it. Okay.
Sounds great. If I can just comment, the financial indicator presentations can be done within an hour maximum. So,
okay,
the binders were out ahead of time going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right then. So, is there any other questions or comments for David? Did you have a question, Larry? Comment? Are you muted?
Just a quick comment. Again, as well as everybody else has said, thanks, Dave, for his presentation for the budget. It was very explanatory and well done. To all the different departments, some of the departments have really done their job for this budget. And there's a few that need to sharpen their pencil. So look forward to the next meeting.
Efficiencies, Larry, efficiencies.
Efficiencies.
Okay. All right then. Okay, so if there's no other comments, I'm going to look for somebody for the confirming bylaw. Move the confirming.
Barry might have a comment.
Yeah, the install parking lot at Concession Street Park. I don't think we need to do that now, do we?
We don't know.
Well, I thought
That's cool.
in the.
That's a work in progress. I think
No,
we
but I
should.
mean, really, when the place went for sale, we asked for 4 parking spots. So did it sell
Okay.
those?
Excuse me, but let's talk about that. That's something to bring forward later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor Martin, that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so somebody move the confirming bylaw for today's meeting.
So
Councilor
moved.
Webb. And I can't see Deputy Mayor Giroux, but I think his hand went up. All in favor? That's carried, and motion to adjourn.
Done.
Moved by Councilor Pomeroy and seconded by Councilor Ellis.